Testing, testing.
Good morning, everybody, and you're all very welcome to the Guinness Enterprise Centre here today. My name is Maeve Henshin. I'm a researcher with Teagasc, the Agricultural and Food Development Authority, and in the context of the bioeconomy, I'm also a principal investigator in BioRbic SFI Bioeconomy Research Centre, and I'm a PI on the EU-funded ShapingBio project. So just I suppose to note that the timing of today's event isn't a coincidence. It takes place within the context of Bioeconomy Ireland Week. And Bioeconomy Ireland Week was actually started as a one-day event in 2018, following the publication of the National Bioeconomy Policy Statement. And the publication of that statement was significant. It hasn't been done in every country around the world or even in every European country. So it was indicated a significant commitment by the government in this sector and a recognition of the potential of the sector. But at the time, obviously, it was recognised that there wasn't enough, I suppose, awareness among different communities of what the bioeconomy meant and the opportunities that it presented, hence the establishment of Bioeconomy Ireland Week, which is now in its 5th week. So there are many other activities happening during the day. So if you look at Bioeconomy Ireland Week website, you'll see all the various other activities that are happening as well. So in the context of today's event, we recognised from work that we've done in the ShapingBio project that funding is a very significant challenge still. And we identified the potential of an opportunity of an event such as this to bring those who are looking for funding together with those who have funding. So that's the kind of the basis of the structure of today. So we're starting off with a keynote speaker by somebody who has established not one, but 2 startup companies and who is also a very successful scientist and lives, eats and breathes the bioeconomy. So I'll introduce him shortly. Then we're following that by a fireside chat led by Rosalind Beer from Further here in the Guinness Enterprise Centre. We'll talk to 2 very successful startup companies from different sectors, and we'll have Q&A following that. And then we'll talk to people from the venture capital and the traditional banking community as well. So we'll have questions and answers following each of those individual sections. So just, I suppose, a few housekeeping items. There are a number of companies actually based here in the Guinness Enterprise Centre, as you would expect. So the toilets are down that corridor, but there are clients of the Guinness Enterprise Centre located down there as well. So please be conscious of that in terms of moving up and down. And it's not a place for congregating, and it's not a place for taking photographs. And then if there's a fire, obviously don't use the lift, go down the stairs and assemble, go out through the gate and keep left, and there'll be a place to assemble down there. So I think that's it from my side in terms of opening the session. And without further ado, I'd very much like to welcome Professor Kevin O'Connor. He's known, anybody who's working in the bioeconomy will know Kevin well. Kevin he's the founder, as I said, of not one, but 2 spin-out companies. And in addition to that, he's a full professor of applied microbiology and biotechnology at UCD and the director of BioRbic SFI Bioeconomy Research Centre. And I suppose just, it's no harm for people who are not active in that space to recognise that that was the first SFI centre, or the first centre for bioeconomy research that was established in Ireland, but it's actually going through its 2nd iteration now, and that's not always taken for granted. So I think recognition of the hard work and the success of the centre to date as well. Kevin is also the chairperson of the Irish Bioeconomy Foundation, which is driving the development of the rural bioeconomy campus in Lachine, County Tipperary. and also the development of the climate neutral dairy farm within the aegis of the Farm Zero C project in West Cork in collaboration with the Carberry Group. So I'll hand over to you now, Kevin. Thank you.
Without the mic, or do you need the mic? Without the mic is fine, or? Oh, for recording, sorry. Okay, so I need the mic, sorry. Okay, so anyway, the bioeconomy really, it provides us with bioactives, pharmaceuticals. Any of you eat a mushroom, for example, you get beta glucans from the mushroom. It's not just the protein in the mushroom, there's other things in there as well. So our food is complex, but we can also refine byproducts, etc., to get those bioactives. The paints and glues that we use now are fossil-based, but traditionally they would have been from the bio-based sector. The solvents and glues we use are also fossil-based, but we would have again got them from forestry, for example, and materials that, for example, plastics would have been would have replaced materials that would have come from wood. Okay, it's just to give you an idea, but we can actually manufacture a lot of these things using modern biotechnology, modern chemistry, and using bio-based resources. So what I say is the bioeconomy is really about going back to the future. Yeah. So biotechnology, actually, there's been a recent publication, well, recent, it was in March of 2024. The European Union came out and said, okay, we must have a better strategy for biomanufacturing and biotechnology because other parts of the world, like Asia, like America, are pushing ahead and we're being left behind. And as someone who's spun out 2 companies, I can see this, that biotechnology is almost invisible in many ways if you're not in the pharmaceutical industry, for example. So biotechnology, people view it as different things. It's protein expression, it's genetic engineering. For me, it's about fermentation. It's about using natural organisms, microorganisms and their enzymes to perform chemistry, yeah, and perform what we call biocatalysis. So this is very much the kind of area that I am in. Yeah, and I do all of those things, protein expression, genetic manipulation, etc. So in my lab, what we're really doing is we're looking at resources and we're trying to valorize those resources, whether they're waste cooking oils, whether they're waste sugars, waste plastics, virgin sugars and fatty acids, and we try to convert them using biotechnology, using microorganisms. So we develop processes from the ground up and we try to scale them. We try to engineer bacteria, and where possible, we don't engineer them when we use natural microorganisms with natural abilities. And basically, it's a bit like saying, okay, how fast can you run? I always use running analogies. Yeah. So how fast can you run? If I put you on a treadmill and I turn the treadmill up to full speed and you fall off after 2 seconds, I learn nothing about how you can run. What you need to do with microorganisms is the same. You need to slow it down, turn the conveyor belt down nice and slowly and see how they behave. Temperature, pressure, pH, whatever it is, you see how they perform. And then you start to learn. And many natural microorganisms adapt to the environment in which you place them. And so they can actually perform to very, very high levels. Yeah. So with my PhD students and my postdoc, I'm always asking about the product that they make. In many conferences that I go to, I ask students, well, we make biodegradable plastic. What does your biodegradable plastic look like? They go, I have no idea. It's on a gas chromatograph. I know there's a peak there that tells me there's my plastic, but I don't know what it is. I'm always saying to my PhD students, put it in your hand, have some plastic in your hand. You made this, your bacteria made it. So we spend a lot of time doing downstream processing to isolate the products that we make. Yeah, we use mostly bacteria, but we also use things like fungi. Yeah. And so, like I said in the previous slide, we use synthetic biology, but we also use wild type microorganisms. And what we try to produce is a variety of different products. Yeah. So people think that the bioeconomy is about biofuels. Yeah, but it's not actually. It's about a wide variety of different products. Some of those products are beneficial for health. Some of those products will be used as processing aids like enzymes. Like if anybody's involved in cheese manufacturing, you add enzymes as part of that process to make the cheese. Those enzymes are processing aids. Yeah. If you drink a sports drink, there will be amino acids in there that will have been produced using biotechnology. Yeah. The materials, for example, biodegradable plastics, polylactic acid, PHAs, starch-based plastics, they all come from nature. A lot of them are actually produced using biotechnology or chemistry. So it's a variety of different products that are actually made. Okay, so I have a biocatalysis group in UCD. That's the logo up there. I have spun out two companies called Novamentis and Bioplastic, and I'll tell you what they do later. As Maeve said, I was involved in the foundation of Bioorbic, the Bioeconomy Research Centre, and I'm also chairperson of the Irish Bioeconomy Foundation. So I have many hats, I do many things. And I put up Nova UCD there because Nova UCD helped me on my journey towards establishing these companies in terms of understanding intellectual property, understanding whether I would license that technology to industry or whether I would start a spin out. I did their training course, I did their competitions, etc., in order to learn about how to start a company. So Bioplastic is the first company, founded in 2008. And Bioplastic, we effectively convert waste into biodegradable plastic. So the top left diagram, which is very small, is an electron micrograph of bacteria. Looking into the bacterial gray cell, you see all these white globs or globules or blobs. They are actually plastic. Yeah. Coincidentally, the organism is just storing them as a fat source. They're like saying, okay, I'll download from nature this carbon, I'll store it because it protects me. It's a food storage for me, so I'm out competing my neighbor. Yeah. But in actual fact, those storage materials have plastic properties, or they're polymers. They can be used as glues. They can be used, and I'm actually going to say that, they can be used as glues. They can be used as additives in plastics. They can be added to paints. So you often see like solvent-free paints. In the solvent-free paint, they add polymers so that the polymer, it will help the paint to stick. So you're putting it onto a ceiling. The solvent actually helps it to stick to the surface. Yeah, you can replace that. Or there's also fossil polymers in there. You can replace that with bio-based plastics, and it helps it to basically adhere, but you don't have the solvents in the paint. And we've also been developing things like a replacement for Scotch tape, which is the Austrian and German equivalent of sellotape. Yeah. So they're developing a PLA backing, and then you put glues, bio-based, biodegradable glues on the surface. Novamentis is also a biotech company, but it's quite different. We're actually producing a bioactive. The bioactive is called hydroxytyrosol. If any of you eat olives or drink olive oil, you get hydroxytyrosol in your diet. Hydroxytyrosol reduces fat oxidation in your bloodstream. Because it prevents fat oxidation in your bloodstream, the fats are then moved faster out of the body and they don't layer your arteries. This is the problem. When they're oxidized, they go hard. When they go hard, they layer onto your artery, and then they cause things like arteriosclerosis and heart disease. And this is linked to the Mediterranean diet. And hydroxytyrosol is actually a wonder molecule. It does many different things. So we have cosmetic products, we have anti-cholesterol products, we have products for animal feed. I'm skipping ahead now. So it's good for heart health. We're also doing a neuro project where we've shown resilience in mice, for example, and also higher cognitive performance as a result of a hydroxytyrosol diet. Like I said, we've developed cosmetic products, and also we're actually trying to get regulatory approval for its use in animal feed, because it's not making smarter chickens. It's promoting greater feed conversion ratio. So basically you have to add less feed to get the same amount of chicken. And we're also doing trials in pigs as well, we're getting the same results. Okay, so that's kind of a journey. That's kind of an introduction into, okay, what am I? I'm a biotechnologist. I'm a microbiologist. I'm interested in the bioeconomy. I spun out 2 companies. One is converting waste into value-added products. One is converting virgin materials from nature into a bioactive. So I suppose the first thing that I really learned is about intellectual property. Yeah, you can have an idea, but is that idea really inventive? So the first thing really, if you're thinking about the innovation journey, is to understand what are you creating or what are you inventing? Are you learning from others, or are you really making a leap? We all learn from others. Nobody makes a really truly inventive step, really. Yeah, we're always learning from somebody else. But in terms of patenting, you have to take the idea and then ask the question, well, is this inventive? Is it novel? Is it surprising? There are 3 things that a patent lawyer will ask you. Yeah, it might be novel from a scientific point of view, but it may not actually be inventive. Yeah, and it may not be surprising, because someone might say, well, if I took information A, B, and C together, I could actually come to the conclusion of D just like you. So therefore, it's not surprising. And that then interferes with invention. Yeah. But I've gone through so many invention disclosure forms, I can't count how many we've gone through. Yeah. But then you go to patent application, you submit the application, and then you have to deal with the examiner. And the examiner is the person that asks all of the awkward, difficult questions. Yeah. And you can spend 2, 3, 4 years fighting with the examiner before you actually get approval for your patent. And sometimes you don't get approval. I wouldn't say often, but oftentimes it does happen that you're on the edge, or you may have to change your patent slightly in order to get coverage, and then it's granted. And that usually, for us, at least takes 3 or 4 years. You have 20 years of a patent, and then you have 16 to 17 years to try and you have now protection for that patent. And really, I think this is really important. Understanding, being a scientist helps you to really understand a difficult language that business people don't understand. It is the equivalent of, like, English is to Chinese. Yeah, they're both languages, but we don't understand each other. Yeah, so unless you are fluent in Mandarin. Yeah, so but it's really, that's where you create value for a company. That's where you create value for investors, because investors will say, I want to fund the opportunity, but I don't know what the opportunity is. Often investors, they know that a particular sector is hot, it's sexy, it's where we should be going, but we don't know where to invest. Yeah, and so your understanding of the science helps you actually to create patents. That helps you to create value, and that helps to attract investment. That's really, really important. So in terms of technology development, a lot of people are lab-based scientists. You know about the technology readiness level scale. Have you heard about this TRL? So TRL 1, it's kind of in your head. TRL 3, it's in a test tube or a flask. TRL 6, it's been in a fermenter, reasonable scale fermenter. And then TRL 9, it's in industrial production, let's say. Yeah. So TRL 6 is kind of a pilot demo. So this is not how things work, as in the lab scale, just get a bigger test tube or a bigger flask, and then get an even bigger flask. And that's how it'll work. The engineering and the various things that happen as you scale is also a journey. Like, as a scientist, you understand the technology, but you do not understand engineering. So you need engineers, chemical engineers, civil engineers, that will actually be able to help you. One chemical engineer to design and tell you what kind of design you need for your reactors. 2, the civil engineer saying that'll never go in a building, that's an explosion hazard. You can't do this and you can't do that under the regulations. So you need a team of people that are actually going to help you to understand how to scale. So for us, scaling, yeah, it's been hugely educational. So have your eyes open. If you want to go on this innovation journey, the development and scale up of these technologies is a massive, massive challenge, and it is incredibly expensive. Yeah, it's one of the reasons we came up with the idea to say Ireland needs its own pilot scale facilities that all actors can use. So we put it in the middle of the country in Tipperary, and really the idea there was to say, okay, anybody can access this. Anybody who has a technology in biotechnology or chemical technologies could access this and use it. We started really with the idea in 2014. We got some funding in 2018, and we got more funding actually last week. So we're now, people are saying, oh, it was kind of a tough year, all this application. I was like, it's a tough decade actually. Yeah. So it takes a huge amount of time to get these things off the ground. A lot of people nod and go, yeah, that's a great idea, but getting the money for this. And that's why also I say that the Irish Bioeconomy Foundation is like one of my third startups, yeah, because there's been the same journey in getting that up and running. So you do absolutely need to collaborate, and I'm repeating myself now, because you need those engineers in order to help you to understand the designing, the planning, etc., that is needed to scale up. So it's not just the scientists, it's also the people with the hard hats. They're really, really important. Okay, so the other thing as well is that what are investors looking for? Yeah, so an investor comes and says, okay, I want you as a technical person to understand the science. I want you to be able to translate that into a language for me as an investor, but I also want you to have a vision. Yeah, because the investor can have a business vision. They can understand the market, which you don't understand as a scientist. And they can say, I can see the market opportunity. I can see where this is going. But you need to have the vision as well about where the area is going, where your technology can be applied and how it will scale. Yeah, so the scientific and technical knowledge on the how this works is really important for investors as well. Yeah, and investors don't want you to bluff them. They want the facts. They're smart people. They're just not scientists. So what they want really from you is an honest appraisal of where you're going. Now, an investor also wants the best picture possible. Tell me how much money I'm going to make. Yeah. And so there is that balance between being too nerdy as a scientist and saying, not so sure, I need about 10 years of research for that. And the investor going, I have a 3-month to 6-month time window. So how's this going to work? So yeah, there is a bit of juggling going involved. Yeah. But it is about the business opportunity. Ultimately, it's not about your science. In a way, as a scientist, you have to park that and say, okay, it's about the technology and how it will scale. It is about the size of the business opportunity. It is where the business opportunity is going to happen. Yeah, that dictates the size of the investment. So that really tells you and tells the investor, well, how much money is actually going to be needed to do this. And generally, people grossly underestimate the amount of money that is needed in order to bring a technology to market or to mature a company. So the market analysis, that's really, you would think, up to the business people. But what happens actually is, if you look at market analysis and you look at some of the big companies that are actually analyzing the market, they employ scientists. They employ scientists to look at the science behind what's going into the market. So you actually can't step back from that as a scientist. You have to work with your business partners or your business partner, whoever it is, in order to understand what size of the market can we get? Is it actually in Europe? Is it in Asia? Geography, where are you going to go? Is it South America? Are you offering the market diversification from what they're doing already? Will that cost them money in order to invest, etc.? There's a lot of problems. You think, oh, this is a great product. Everybody should have it. But maybe the market says, well, we already have a good enough product, and your product isn't going to add real value. So then you have to change and say, okay, you have to pivot. And I've said it, our companies, my 2 companies, have pivoted more than an MBA pro, yeah? So you have to pivot a lot. Your original idea, you might have to kill it, yeah? And you have to be comfortable with that. It's very hard to say, no, my original idea was this and I want to hang on to it. You have to sometimes let that go, yeah? So the direction of travel really is informed by scientific and technical knowledge. The business people will understand the market and where it's going, but you have to inform them as well. So it's kind of it's a good marriage. But the data can often help them to make difficult decisions. Yeah. So sometimes it's like, do I go here? Do I go there? What do I do? But sometimes I think oftentimes the science helps them, yeah, to make that decision. The worst thing ever is regulation, yeah, for a business. Yeah, it is absolutely the pits, but it is really critical to protect people. Yeah, so regulation is there to regulate the market, to make sure that there aren't cowboys everywhere launching products and telling people and greenwashing and doing all of these things. So regulation is really important, but the amount of time we spend on regulation is phenomenal. So you can take any of the images at the bottom and apply them to regulation. It's a long, winding road. There are barriers everywhere. It's a maze where nobody gives you, you get in and no one tells you where the exit is, and you're always going uphill. Yeah. So the amount of learning that is needed there is incredible, but you do need, again, experts to help you, and they are ridiculously expensive. Yeah. They're absolutely, you're talking, you think, oh, well, if I had to get someone to, like, we wrote our own dossier for the FDA. and we got GRAS approval for our product for hydroxytyrosol in the States. Well, it's not really approval, it's generally regarded as safe. They have a non-objection letter. Yeah? They don't say you're approved like a pharmaceutical drug. They say we don't object. Based on the evidence that you have provided, we're okay with you marketing this product. We were going to pay upwards of $500,000 to a consultant to do that for us. And we decided as a company, as scientists, we think we know enough. We'll look at other dossiers, we'll learn. It definitely took us longer. It took us about 2 years, but we got approval in the States. We have approval in Brazil, for example, in South America. We again did that ourselves. We're actually now working with consultants in Brazil because the animal regulation, we got human approval. Animal regulation is a bit more difficult. So we're getting help there, but also revenue generating now. So we have money, so we were able to pay for things. And Europe is still a slog. Yeah, we're still grinding our way through EFSA. I hope nobody's from EFSA here, but it's we're getting there. We're getting there. Okay, but it's really important. And I would say Europe, yeah, Europe is everything. Barriers, windy road, mazes, upward cliff face, basically. But it is the most regulated region in the world, but maybe there's a good reason for that. But I think even EFSA recognizes that they definitely have to try and improve the regulatory path. Yeah, but if you're a scientist, it's not about the technology, it's also about things like regulation. And you have a really critical role here, because the business people will say that the amount of technical knowledge that you have to supply to regulators to get approval is enormous. Yeah, so you really need, as a scientist, to play a role here. For sales, like with small companies and startups, you know, you're everything. You make the tea, you make business decisions, you work with people, and everything in between. Yeah, so to kind of say that there is a very nice even delineation, like in a multinational where there's a regulatory department and there's a business development department and there's a sales department, mash it all into one. Yeah, and you make mistakes, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes are part of what the learning process. But you have to decide: are you a business to customer? Are you a business to business, for example? That's one thing. That doesn't really affect scientists, let's say, but as a founder of a company, you have to make those decisions. And market segmentation is really important as well. What market are you going after? And again, that relates to the size of the opportunity and the ease with which you can enter into that market. For example, cosmetics is much less regulated than food or feed. So it's a much easier market to get into. It's still regulated, but it is easier. Yeah. And then you have to decide, well, what key geographies are you going after? What key target markets are you going after? And for example, I've spent a lot of time as well looking at market reports, market trends, etc. as a scientist, yeah, which is something I thought I would never, ever do. Yeah. And then really in marketing, again, the marketing people are going to say to you, well, the marketing people is my CEO, who's also head of sales, etc. But he'll say, can I say this? Is this technically correct? Yeah. So you are involved in marketing as well and saying, okay, no, you can't say that. That's actually not what our product does. It sounds great and it'd be a great tagline, but it's not what we do. So you have to be very careful there. So your scientific knowledge is really important. But also these investors and my CEO, Enrico is an Italian. Enrico will bring you along to meetings with investors. He'll bring you along to meetings with customers and he'll say, talk science, tell me the science bit, yeah? Or tell them the sciencey bit. So it is important that you really have clarity on what you're saying and that you're comfortable with the science and that what you're saying is really truthful, is you can stand over it, yeah? The business people want to sell product. I'm not saying they're unscrupulous, but they will say, well, can I stretch it a little? Does this sound good from a marketing point of view, yeah? And the other thing is, it's really important to be on social media. And for example, we are now debating with somebody about an influencer on YouTube for marketing of the product, yeah, for a cosmetic product. So it's something that I have no idea about and I'm not really comfortable with it, but it's something that the business people and investors say, we have to do this, we have to be out there. So this is another aspect. How am I doing on time? Am I going over?
Getting tight now.
Okay, sorry, yeah. So I suppose the other thing is, and I've talked about this, is building a team, yeah? You need the technical people, you need the business development people, sales and marketing, legal, contracts, regulation, administration. In reality, all of that often starts to come together. You see the scientific people have to do the regulation, the business development, sales and marketing and administration, they all start to come together because one or two people. And often actually, and we do it, the legal and the accounting, it's somebody else, it's an office. It's like, we use RDJ accounting, RDJ legal, sorry, down in Cork. And our accountants are actually based in Santry. So we don't do that ourselves, we outsource it. Yeah. So in conclusion, I suppose a scientist is really important as part of a startup company in attracting investment, in getting patents, getting regulation, etc. But they're not the only stakeholder. Scientists will not succeed in business on their own. They absolutely need investors and business people. And for example, my CEO is currently in Morocco trying to do a deal with a chicken production company. And we brought one of our industrial investors because he knows how to structure a business deal at large scale with industry. So he's not just an investor, he's a strategic investor that understands how to do business. So our approach to do that business deal is so naive compared to how he's structuring the business deal. So that's really, really important. You can't do it on your own. So partnership is absolutely essential. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Europeans fear failure like no other region. Yeah, the US, they actually actively promote failure. Investors will ask you, give me a good example of where you failed. Yeah, because I want to know that you've learned. Yeah, whereas in Europe, we're like, we don't get out of bed if we think we're going to fail. Yeah, it's a very different mentality. So you're always learning, you're always growing, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Kevin. And look, this is obviously someone who's a lot of experience. So we're a little bit over time, but we might take one quick question. And obviously then there will be time afterwards to chat to Kevin as well. So.
Hi. Hello, I'm Margaret Brennan-Forney from TOOS. I work in a similar field, so similar products we're trying to develop. But maybe, Kevin, that was really well put together in a very short period of time, an awful lot of information. And we can see all that goes into this. Could you maybe relate to you put up the biorefinery and those items as well, those infrastructures, which we don't really have ready to go here in Ireland yet, and the products that you are taking to market. Are you kind of stuck with the supply of the biofermentation aspect to get to the scale for your products, or have you got successfully some products that you can have out there?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So as a company, we made a decision maybe 5 years ago that we were actually going to partner to scale up. The level of investment needed to bring our product to market was tens of millions. We partnered with a company in Europe who have already existing facilities. They're not a toll manufacturer per se, but they're actually toll manufacturing for us. So in order to get to the kind of 50,000, 80,000 litre fermenters and the downstream equipment, we had to partner. So Ireland didn't have the facilities. And we tried actually in Ireland, and technology transfer was a huge problem. The lack of knowledge of biotech and fermentation in Ireland was so poor that we spent a huge amount of money over 18 months to come out at the other end. And one of our chief scientists, actually, Rita Davis, said they've learned more than we did. Yeah. So at that point, we said, okay, we have got to change. And we formed a partnership with an Italian company.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question, and thanks, Kevin, for your response. So thank you very much to Kevin for his contribution, and he'll be here with us for a little while. So thank you, Kevin. So we'll now hand over to Rosalind Beer, who's going to introduce two other people who have plenty of experience of walking the walk and talking the talk as well.
I'm just going to remove this.
Right, so I'd like to just open up the conversation. Obviously, you guys have been on the journey. I'd like to kind of talk about your companies and their relationship with the bioeconomy, and then your funding journey, and the lessons learned along the way. So, Frank, would you like to start? So, Omu Pet Food, what is it? How does it relate to the bioeconomy? And again, I think both of you are sort of trailblazers in your area. I think we'll kind of touch on the things that you had to do that were quite innovative that maybe others might learn from.
All hear me, yeah? Brilliant, great to be here. So thanks a million, Kevin, that was fantastic. So it'll be a hard one to follow, but we'll try our best. So Omu Pet Food is a veterinary range of products using insect protein. So my background, I'm a veterinary surgeon. I've been in practice for just over 10 years now, and I just came up with this idea two years ago to start using insect protein in products for companion animals, for cats and for dogs. So insect protein itself, it's incredible. I don't know, has anyone here heard about insect protein for our pets being used? Great, so only 3 of us. Insect protein itself, like it's like a super nutrient. It contains more amino acids than chicken breast. There's more iron than spinach. There's more calcium than milk. There's more potassium than bananas. So like it is incredible. And from a sustainability point of view as well, it's amazing. It stands out in its own. So to put it in comparison to say cattle, to produce 1 kilogram of cattle meat, we require about 20,000 litres of water. To produce 1 kilogram of insect protein, you need just 1 litre of water. So it's extremely sustainable. From a circular economy as well. So to feed insect protein, they actually eat leftover food that would have been disposed of in
Food waste.
Food waste, yeah. So leftover products that would have been from Tesco's, Sainsbury's, Asda, if it was the UK, and that would have been just put into food waste. So they actually feed the insect proteins these fruits and vegetables, which are highly nutritious for them, and they gut load them then with all those vitamins and minerals, and that's why they're so nutritious. And then what's left over after you actually process the insects, that stuff, it's called frass. And that's fantastic fertilizer then to plant more vegetables, plant more trees. So it really is a circular economy in itself.
Can I just ask, which came first, the veterinary need to produce something better for animals as a food product, or was the sustainability a big piece? Like what was the impetus for you doing this?
Yeah, so like coming from a science background and being in the veterinary sector, I'd always have seen the issues with our pets. So the reason why I use insect protein is that with our cats and our dogs, it's the protein source in the food that actually causes allergies. So it could be the beef, it could be chicken, it could be lamb, it could be pork. They're all the issues that cause allergies in our dogs. So to use something that's a novel protein, something that their immune system has never met before, is a fantastic way to prevent the allergies. So that would have come first. And actually, even through customer research, I find that a lot of the consumers and the pet parents that purchase the product, they're really happy with the benefits that their dogs are getting from it. But I also find that one of the reasons why the consumers might stay with the product is because of the sustainability front. So they will say, I really like that my dog doesn't have allergies anymore. It's been able to come off its medication. I'm really happy with that, but also I'm really happy that it's better for the environment. So there is always a factor, an environmental factor to the purchase as well.
Super. So Aoibhinn, Food Cloud, can you tell us, to me, it's a fantastic business, but it's very multifaceted. So can you talk to us about, where it started, where it's now, and the elements that are part of
that? Audience, because it is multifaceted, but essentially, 40% of food produced globally is wasted. Ireland, we waste around 750 tons of food every year, and 1 in 11. In addressing those 2 issues, so rescuing food that's perfectly good before it goes to the insects, and redistributing it out to community organisations. We started with a technology platform, so we're 11 years into our first donation from Tesco and Street, and basically our technology platform allows businesses to details of what they have, and we recruit a network of organisations then that are very focus on that for the purpose of this.
Yeah.
We also have warehouses in Dublin, Galway and Cork where we take large volumes for everything from farms. I think with series farms here, everything from farms to manufacturers to producers to distribution centres comes into the warehouse, and then community organisations draw it there. I suppose in an Irish context, we're redistributing around 4,000 tonnes. There is about 200 food companies and out to a network of 7. This discussion and this audience, like I'll just focus on technology. So what we did differently in Ireland back 11 years ago was we were students. So I did my master's thesis in surplus food redistribution and then took it from there. So I suppose there are students here, it is possible to take your research and bring it to life. We started with technology because we know money. So the warehousing solution is quite tried and tested. So there's about 80 of us globally. In every country, there's similar organizations, but they weren't using technology, and generally we're NGOs, and we are an NGO too. So after a couple of years, we'd scaled in Ireland with Tesco, Lidl, Aldi, Dunnes, BWG, and then Tesco in the UK said, look, we really like what you're doing in Ireland. Could you share, could you bring? So it had taken us 2 years to scale to 120, no, it's taken us a year to scale to 120 Tesco stores nationwide. There was more Tesco stores in Birmingham than there was in Ireland. And we were like, so we partnered with an NGO in the UK called Fairshare, who had the warehouses but didn't have the technology. Similarly, Tesco, so that went wet, like we're still working with them since 2015. Tesco were in Czech Republic and Slovakia, so we know the guys in Czech Republic and Slovakia, back to partnerships. So our technology is basically used by NGOs like us to help them grow their impact. Excitingly, over the last couple of years with Irish aid funding, we've trialed our technology in Kenya, so where they're really like massively producing like an agri economy, but have serious issues with climate change and food security issues. So we piloted our technology in November 2023, and we've just celebrated the redistributing the equivalent of meals through the platform since we've done that. So we're just coming up on a year. So I suppose for the purposes of this audience, like I suppose the journey is around like developing a tech platform. All you have to do to like bring that to life, and then how do you scale it? What's a little bit different from us to probably a lot of you guys is that we're non-profit. So we have sustainable income. We charge the retailers a fee per store, but to invest in the technology, you need to fundraise. It's different sources, some similar, but some different sources.
Okay, I'll come back to that. So I guess, you know, Kevin touched on there's all great scientific exploration and the lab testing and everything that you're doing and figuring out how to do the processes, and again with engineers, etc. So let's talk about the funding. So, you know, we have the next panel, which, you know, as David Bull said, come and ask me for money. So if anyone's looking for money, he's quite open to have conversation. So talk to us about your funding journey. So I think what's interesting is you're for profit, obviously doing good at the same time, and then you're an NGO. So your funding journey to date, and obviously you're at different stages as well. So talk to us about that. And again, as a scientist, effectively having to go into the world, you know, raise money, and you know, how has that journey been for you?
Yeah, I just circling back as well to what Kevin was saying about how you speak English and Chinese. It really is the truth, because I started off as a scientist, as a vet. I knew the veterinary market. I knew dogs. I knew cats. And then to jump straight into a business mindset, it can be quite difficult. So my journey, my business journey really started off with Enterprise Ireland, with the New Frontiers program, phase 2 and phase 3. And that really gave me the leg up to understand the market, to understand sales, finances, marketing, the whole shebang. So that really gave me the start, the kick to understand the business side of things more than just thinking of it. And as well, Roz often, she often mentions that I started off, I work further as well, further.ie, start off as vet Frank, and then I sort of evolved and developed into business Frank. So there is that aspect to it.
You don't have a split personality, but we do say on conversations when we were working on Frank's PSSF application with EI, we're like, right now, Frank, let's put your CEO hat on.
Yeah.
Let's put the scientist hat to the side just for that purpose.
And I remember that moment everything changed, and you stop thinking of, I have to talk about the facts, I have to talk about the dogs and how good it is for the dogs, and you start having to mention the finances, and to attract investors, you really have to sell the company in a different light than you would to another scientist.
So talk to us about that. So funding to date, and then in terms of traction, because you have traction. So how are you finding that whole journey?
Yeah, so started off with the New Frontiers. There's a bit of a stipend there with that, so that definitely helped. Moved over then to PSSF, got into the PSSFF. I'm just on the second drawdown of that now at the moment, and then I'm looking next year.
100,000.
100K, yeah.
Sort of a redeemable loan note,
yeah. So they start off with the 50K. They give you certain milestones that you're hit. And then once you hit those milestones, they'll then move into the second 50K. So I'm just in the process of hitting those milestones. And once they're hit, then I'll move into the second tranche. And following on from that, then I hope to move into the HPSU next year, which will be private investment co-funded with Enterprise Ireland. So that's the hope. But before the New Frontiers, I started off with just bootstrapping, saved all my money over the years, and then decided, no, this, instead of putting mortgage into a house, and this is going to start the business. So I was fortunate. I started off with a bit of my own money. So that's the whole journey.
Fantastic. Aoibhinn, yourself. So I know there's NGO, government funding. So how's that balanced up? And have you had to just put a different hat on in terms of like going out and seeking funding and investment?
Yeah, so we started similarly. We were actually in our first office here with the NDRC, so stipend or 3-month incubator. We did have so Tesco, and I suppose the breakthrough was we started charging a fee per store straight away. So we did have income straight away, or well, 3 months in to kind of go time on it. So that really helped. Then I suppose until about 2019, we would have been about 75% sustainable income and 25% fundraised through corporate partnerships, a little bit of government grants, like, you know, an EPA grant here, a Department of Agriculture grant there, so pulling down loads of those types of grants. It gets a little bit more complicated when I focus on the full organisation. With our warehouses, we have community employment schemes, we run a food aid programme, we run corporate volunteering, so we do lots. It's a big hustle to kind of get the whole sustainable income up, but particularly focusing on the technology. We were able to invest to a certain point through earned income, and we were bootstrapping. So our first technology was designed on a PowerPoint presentation, outsourced to a local, like, Irish software development company, and then we brought it in-house only when we were scaling to the UK. So we were still till 2019, 2020, we were, you know, fundraising through earned income, I suppose, or funding the technology development. But then I suppose there is a global opportunity. Within our world, there is like 80 food banks. Only about 10% is done virtually. The rest is through logistics and, you know, trucks and warehousing or whatever. Whereas in Ireland, we're doing 50-50 virtual. So there's a huge opportunity. We started investing in the platform. So we have EI funding, because we're an NGO, it's kind of a R&D grant. And then we do have global foundations. So the likes of Rockefeller, PIMCO Foundation, Citigroup Foundation. So it's actually not that different from the pitch. It's like the vision, the return on investment in terms of impact. But then there is milestones, value for money. There's a lot of governance around how you're spending the money, all of that kind of stuff. So I suppose looking forward, since 2020, we've had to fundraise a lot more. We brought the technology to another level in terms of being able to, you know, scale it to Kenya, for example, without like having drowning in a myriad of spreadsheets in the background. So we are now fundraising for the whole organization. Our fundraising target is about 4 per year, which is relentless. To keep it going, but the mix is about 30% government, 30% government grants, and foundations, and then major donors.
So just the appetite for consumers, particularly with you, Frank, for your product to be sustainable. Is there a cost for sustainability? And do you feel that, I guess I'm asking two questions really, but how's our appetite in Ireland for sustainability in the bioeconomy? Do you feel that there's a lot of education that you have to go out and get yourself involved in with customers and investors even? How does that fit?
Yeah, I thought there was going to be more of a hindrance at the start, because when I went out to the pet expos and shows and expositions, I thought there was going to be more of a hindrance when I say to people, oh, it's insect protein. Now you do get it all the time. People say, I'm not feeding my dog insect protein. That's disgusting. And they liken it to just a spider outside or a wasp that's flying around. But these are actually clean farmed insects. They're similar to cattle farming and chicken farming. They're in processes. They're in high-rise buildings. There's a whole biosecurity point of view as well, to make sure that everything is safe. So once you explain everything to people, once you explain the benefits, like I said at the start, how nutritious insects are, there's more of a relaxation than with the consumer, and they say, well, I'll give it a try. Dog loves it. They start seeing the benefits, and then they want to stay on it.
I did tell you, my 6-year-old on the school run this morning said to me, well, what about the poor insects?
Yeah.
You're not killing them.
Yeah.
So I said it's a little more complicated than that, and it's the lab way. But he was concerned about the insects being, so that was a whole discussion.
It's really interesting.
It's actually kind of cute.
Yeah, they don't know if insects actually have nociceptors, so they don't know if they actually feel pain or not. But just in case, the farm that we use for our insects, they freeze the insects before processing them, just in case they do feel pain.
So I can tell, Chris.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, Aoibhinn, what about yourself? I mean, there's a goodwill in terms of the social impact of what you're doing, and obviously then reaching out into places like Kenya. Have you felt that you've had to do a lot of education?
Yeah, so what we say is that we need like a David Attenborough moment for food waste, because I suppose you have to explain the problem before you come with the solution. So if you don't care about the problem, you're not going to invest in the solution. So one of our challenges has been that B2C, B2B thing. So we're B2B, if you think of a charity organization as a business and, a food company as a business, but we need the C to care, because they put pressure on the retailers and the food companies and whatever. But we're we're a small team, so we have had to sacrifice our B2C messaging because we have to focus on the B2B, and that's been it's a constant wrestling of, is that the right decision or not? But then just going back to so when you establish that, that's fine. We do feel now that we've kind of got the early adopters and the people who care about CSR. And we do feel that there's a need for more tax incentives and support to do the right thing. So by way of example, if we're working with farmers, there's a cost to getting the food to us. If you're working with a retailer, there is a cost. If you're working with a manufacturer, there's no incentives at the moment. So we are trialing, if we give, we have a grant from the Department of Ag to give a small amount to the growers to release that, say, grade 2 veg to us. And it made a massive difference. But I suppose we feel 10 years in, we've kind of got the early adopters, but if we're really going to tackle food waste at a kind of transformative stage, which we need to do, companies need to be incentivized to do the right thing. So at the moment, sometimes it is cheaper to just dump it. So there is a need for more tax incentives, policy change, legislation change in order to make doing the right thing easier and, just as cheap, not cheaper, but...
I guess that was going to be my next question, was a little bit controversial. Like, how do you feel we are in Ireland versus Europe? I know we'd had a previous discussion in terms of our appetite. If you want to talk about the process and where it's processed, in Europe and maybe consumer behavior.
Yeah, from an insect protein point of view, I feel like mainland Europe is a little bit step ahead of us. Particular Germany, the Netherlands, Scandinavia, it's just they're a lot more receptive to the idea of using insect protein. Even in human nutrition, it's actually approved in Europe now for certain insects for human nutrition.
So is that going to be your next deviation then?
It could be. We'll keep the cards close to the chest. But no, I think like even touching on what you were saying there about the market, and I like at the very start when I was designing my packaging, I used monoplastic, so it's all the same type of plastic, which is easier to recycle. Now it would have been cheaper for me to use a metallic layer on the inside to keep the food fresher, but I decided it's a sustainable business. I want to keep with that ethos, and I went down the route of the monoplastic. It is more expensive. Now, the step above that then is biodegradable plastic or compostable packaging as well. Now, they're more expensive. That cost will then go on to the consumer. And I think the market we're in at the moment, it's difficult in Ireland. And if the choice is between a consumer paying €5 for extra for a 2 kilogram bag of food, they'd rather to pay €5 less to have the cheaper one. And if there was more tax incentives, we'd maybe go down the route of compostable packaging.
Are you going to be out picketing like the hospitality?
Yeah, get a group of us together.
Just in terms of like, how do you feel Ireland positions itself in terms of easy conversion and receptibility to what you do versus other countries that you've engaged with?
Well, we're very niche, I suppose. We're a very active part of the global kind of food banking community and the European food banking community. We're actually working with Harvard at the moment. They're doing a policy atlas and of each country, and Ireland is going to be the first country in Europe. So you can go on and you can see, click into Ireland and see what kind of environment it is there for our particular area. We are really good at, say, from a policy perspective, all of the policies are there and written and they look great. It's the implementation side of things so we have a food waste roadmap here, but like the implementation is pretty slow and hopefully it'll speed up over the next while. In terms of, I suppose, where we're seeing, like it is like easy to get things up and running here because we're small, we're agile. So for example, I think we were very lucky to start here, work with the likes of Tesco and Aldi and Lidl. They're so big, but when they're in Ireland, they have autonomy to make decisions here. So that has meant that from an innovation perspective, we feel like we've been able to move quicker than our equivalents in other countries where there's a lot of, where they're big countries, there's a lot of bureaucracy and all of that kind of stuff. But we're definitely not leaders when it comes to food waste prevention. And from a patriotic point of view, I suppose we are selling ourselves as a green economy, and like we could really take the bioeconomy or food waste as leadership positions, which is probably a little bit less controversial than cutting the herd size, so there are areas that we could be pushing forward way quicker, that would be less politically sensitive maybe, and we would be advocating for that.
Okay, so on a personal note for your businesses, what are you looking to achieve in the next 12 months, and what would help you in terms of supports, whether it be regulatory or whether it be investment? So if you want to your ask.
Yeah, so from a science point of view and from a veterinary point of view, I just want to create all these innovative and fantastic products to help cats and dogs. I have all the ideas in my mind now for the future, but you have to sort of take a standstill and realize that from a business perspective, you need investment. So the next step is to secure private investment, 300,000 alongside HPSU co-funded. From an expansion point of view, I'm selling in Ireland at the moment. I'm getting into the UK now in November, which is really exciting because it's one of the biggest pet markets actually in Europe. So yeah, that's the next step.
And supports in terms of your journey, if you were to look for supports in the past and going forward, is there anything that would have helped you more?
I think getting in touch with Enterprise Ireland, I was reluctant at the very start. I was like, I don't know if they will benefit me, but they have been fantastic. Like it's a no-go. If you are starting business, get in touch with Enterprise Ireland.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, so we have just reached a milestone of redistributing about 300 million meals since we started. So we've decided that that's not enough. And obviously with the scale of the problems ahead of us and that we've created a new campaign, so we're going to try and reach 1 billion meals by 2030. And there's kind of 3 initiatives underneath that. So redistributing as much food as possible in Ireland. So that involves getting more and more companies involved, getting more charities on board, and like going after every piece of recoverable food across the supply chain. The next is sharing our technology platform, sharing Foodiverse with the Universe, which is our technology platform. So we're currently across 6 countries and we'd like to reach 10, predominantly focusing on developing countries where we can have the highest return on impact. and building on the success of our work in Kenya. And then underlying those two is that policy and legislative framework. So if there was some incentives for businesses to donate, we feel like we'd have a kind of step change. So in terms of impact, so that's what we want to, that's the third pillar we're going to focus on. So in the next 12 months, it's really putting shape on those. We will need to fundraise, but we'll also need to continue recruiting more and more companies to get involved. And I'd say, again, we've had really good support from Corporate Ireland and from Enterprise Ireland as well. So I would say they're the areas to focus. A lot of companies are really trying to do the right thing, and I'm doing the right thing is also investing in the bioeconomy. So I wouldn't be afraid to try and leverage your networks and contacts in Ireland, your cousins, your neighbours, your friends, and trying to get talking to the people within companies, within partners within your field. And then leveraging Enterprise Ireland is really
I think Kevin touched on the partnerships.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to open up to the floor for questions and answers.
In terms of when you were starting your business, one of the challenging things is obviously reaching customers. So if you could talk a bit about what was your approach to, you felt like you had this great idea and you knew that it was something that would be genuinely beneficial to the pets and the pet owners. How did you go about the process of, developing that initial network of customers? And did you find as well that when you did get that initial, small amount of customers, was the growth from there organic because people really loved the product and saw the benefit, or was it something that you had to put more effort into manually per se?
Yeah. So I remember when you get your first order and you're shipping it out and you get that thrill inside, you're like, oh, people want to buy this product. But I think one biggest thing in Ireland is, and like it's fantastic to open a business here, is word of mouth. Like if your product works, if it says what it does in the tin, then people will recommend it to other pet parents or owners or whatever product you're trying to put out there. Blogs, online blogs, people will recommend it on online blogs. I put a lot of money and thought at the start into Google marketing. It's difficult. I feel like at the very start you throw a lot of money into the wind, but you learn from these mistakes and you grow as well. Expositions, getting out there and actually talking to customers is a big way as well. And whatever product you have, if you can get into the expos that are specific to that, like I'd be going to the pet ones and the dog friendly parks, and you open a little stall there and it's talking to the consumers and getting your product out into their face. That's the best way.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, if I could suggest, the two of you should talk to one another, insofar as that a lot of people don't realize they can use food waste to feed their dogs, and there's huge advantage in that, and it's circular in nature. And I do mean the waste that's coming off the table or whatever, but it is something that should be considered to a greater degree. And there is value in that. I know that it's not what you're doing, but have a think about that. It isn't talked about enough in pet circles.
Yeah, questions back.
Hi there. My question is about, I guess, the circularity associated with the businesses. And both of you, particularly Aideen, I believe you're B2B. What would it take for both of you to be B2B to C, and what levers would be there that could allow that? Because for true biocircularity, that has to be the case.
Yeah, so if we were to be B2C as well, there is actually a platform called Olio or Too Good To Go. So it would be adding that functionality onto our platform. How we've done it is, rather than doing it ourselves, I'll explain what Olio is. We've integrated Olio within our platform. So basically, we work with Tesco, where they have a target to be the first zero food waste retailer. And they work like the first thing is people, the next thing is animals. So they have all of the other solutions underneath. So we would be measured on loads of KPIs around collection rates, how much percentage of the food in the store is being donated. But ultimately, you know, if you're on Camden Street on a Saturday night, the food is available at like 11 o'clock, and like not many charities are going to go there and pick it up. So Olio is actually a consumer app, so a consumer can go and pick up the surplus. So basically what we have done with Tesco is the donation comes into our platform. If there's a charity on the schedule, it goes to them. If it doesn't, it goes to Olio, and we manage that all through the platform. Now it's an Olio brand, so it's not, we're not doing the kind of recruitment of what they call food waste heroes, but I suppose in the spirit of partnership, they're doing that pretty good. So we're just integrating it into the platform. So I suppose, like we would probably have the opinion as you can't really do everything yourself. So it is working in partnerships with others to try and make the ultimate solution. So through that work, for example, now with I'm talking a lot about Tesco, but that's probably our deepest partnership. They're donating up to 60% of what's edible within the stores every day through us. And then what we can't take goes to Olio, which is B2C. So I would just say probably it's very hard as a small company to do both. So maybe in partnership and collaboration you can, but we're happy enough with that for the moment.
I think it'd be quite, just touching on your points there, I think it'd be quite difficult if it was focused on B2C with biosecurity. Then if there was food waste in people's homes, it'd be more of a cost then to yourselves and as well.
Yeah, it's very, and I suppose then there is within Olio as well, if you are moving house or whatever, you can upload what you have in your cupboards and a neighbour can tag it and take it. So there is those solutions that are emerging, but I suppose you know, as an organisation, you do have to kind of focus on one area. Yeah.
And Frank, what about you? You've sort of
gone
from B2B to B2C to back to B2B.
Yeah, so I predominantly am B2C, and I started off with B2C. It's the greatest revenue and the greatest markup for myself from a private business perspective. And in order for your business to grow and for you to make advancements, you're going to have to generate revenue. So that was the easiest way for me to start. But moving to the Enterprise Ireland and getting the second tranche, one of the milestones is actually hitting more B2B markets. So I'm in the process of getting in touch with more veterinary clinics to get the product on the shelves there. So I will be a multi-channel business down the line, but I predominantly focused on the B2C, but I will be moving over to the B2B market as well. But it's really interesting. So you start off business and you say, I'm going to focus on the B2C, and it's not going to change, and that's my business plan. And then over the course of a year, things just completely take a shift, and you can never predict how your business is going to grow and how it's going to change.
Well, I guess it's just being adaptable.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what you need to do commercially. Good question. We have time for another question. Any last questions? Okay, guys. So I just want to thank you so much for coming and sharing your stories. And again, everyone's afterwards networking, so have chats, and obviously the bank, you know, VCs are here as well. So in terms of raising, you can have a chat with them. So I'd just like to thank Frank and Aoibhinn for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed their story. Thank you so much. As you, if you want to leave the mic there, and then So I'd like to welcome up to the stage next for funding requirements and opportunities, Colette Shirley, Head of Bank for Ireland Sustainability, and David Bowles, VC at the Yield Lab. The Yield Lab. Did you guys turn on to mute, or did you turn it off? Frank, did you turn? No, yeah, okay. Yeah, perfect. You just need to turn it back on. Flash. Theme of the day, right? Yeah, the theme of the day. Okay, so yeah, it just should be that little flick when you're going to green. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Okay, so welcome. I might start off with you, Colette. So I have to say we had our kind of little pre-chat, And I was quite impressed with what Bank of Ireland are doing. So I'd just love you to share with the audience. And I know we talked about, I guess, the different types of, organizations you deal with, both from the corporate to the SMEs. And I think it's quite different in terms of the approach. So would you share with us, your role, what Bank of Ireland does, and the different kind of categories of products that they offer?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Colette Shirley. I look after basically sustainability for all of our business customers. And that ranges from, your farmer, your sole trader, all the way up to your large corporate and your PLCs. In terms of how we're viewing that, like we really try to be proactive with our businesses in terms of going out there and having conversations and understanding by sector what challenges our customers are facing, but also by size of business. So I suppose one of the key drivers, which you may or may not be aware of, is Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, which is CSRD. And that is a real driver for us as a business, because we have to report our sustainability data next year. But also a lot of our large businesses are going to have to report, if not next year, the year after. So there we're seeing a lot of preparation for that. And basically, if you don't know what CSRD is, it's a legislation from the EU, which basically is going to put financial reporting on a par with sustainability reporting. So a lot of work to be done in terms of gathering the data that's out there and how that we're going to report that to the market going forward, and the importance of that in terms of our large corporates, they obviously have to go and collect that data. They obviously have to go and collect that data, and where are they going to get that data from? It's basically their supply chain. So they're smaller businesses and their SMEs. And by coincidence, that's also our supply chain. So we're trying to spend time to really find, with our larger businesses it is around lending to them, having products for them, which I can talk about later if you want, but in terms of supporting their investment in their own sustainability strategy. For our smaller businesses, it's much more around education and tools. Like how do we, kind of going back to the step earlier, we were talking about, businesses can't spend on sustainability if they don't really understand it. So actually taking the first step of how do you think about what your carbon footprint is, how do you educate around that, how do we support customers to measure that carbon footprint, and then how do we, then they can start thinking about CapEx investment in their own businesses and what that looks like. And obviously as a bank, we're here to provide product for that. So that's how the journey is probably different from our large ones to our small ones. But also we collaborate then.
Yeah, so talk to me about the Kerry Group as an example.
Yeah.
So you're more of a collaborative partner in that respect.
Definitely.
And how does that relationship work?
So I suppose just in terms of the collaboration, I suppose we see our role as, obviously we have a commercial imperative in what we do, but we also see our role as in helping those smaller businesses to get up that educational curve. And we tend to use our corporate relationships, or Corporate Ireland, to support that as well, because they have the same objective if you think about it. So in terms of Kerry, about 12 months ago, we partnered with Kerry to launch a new product called EnviroFlex. So basically, Kerry Group are a dairy co-op. They have a sustainability program called Evolve, and all of their dairy farmers have the opportunity to sign up to a number of KPIs within the Evolve program. And basically what that means is the farmers will take on a number of sustainable actions on farm that will meaningfully decarbonise what they're doing behind the farm gate. If they agree to those KPIs and join the Evolve program, Kerry have committed to giving the farmers a beneficial milk price. So there's incentive there for the farmer to start thinking about being more sustainable. We have also backed into that program to say, actually, if you are a farmer in the Evolve program, as well as your beneficial milk price, we will also give you a discounted loan. So there's a double incentive there now for a farmer to go, actually, I actually should be getting involved in more sustainable actions. We have since rolled out this product to 67% of dairy farmers in Ireland via 10 different co-ops, with the ambition to get to 100% by the end of this year. And I guess there's a benefit for us in that obviously there's a lending opportunity here, but it's also, again, collecting that data from the farmer. Kerry needs that for their CSRD Scope 3, and so does the bank. So it's all of us just really working in tandem to make sure that we get to the same position, right? Where we want to decarbonise, obviously, but we also want to collect that data. And we all have business imperatives, like Kerry obviously needs to collect the milk, the farmer has to do their job, whereas bank, we want to lend. So there's a circular kind of almost relationship there.
Okay, and just on that before I go on to David, just the SMEs. So there's a lot of smaller, say like Frank, for example, with his own pet food, and there's a lot of other producers. How do you manage those relationships? Is there a lot of information giving, or, you know, they're already back from customers? You know, how are you integrating and getting them to kind of engage with you?
So, I mean, it's still at the very beginnings, I would say, of the journey. You have a good amount of SMEs out there who are aware of sustainability and who are taking actions, but you have also a lot of sustainable SMEs who, while are aware, don't really know where to take the action. So, as I say, we've got a green digital hub where we basically have supports for customers such as by sector. We have a guideline, a pathway of what type of KPIs you should be considering depending what sector you're in. We have a crib sheet on there in terms of all the grants that are available to you as a business. Like Enterprise Ireland has a lot of grants around sustainability. SEAI has a huge amount of grants around sustainability. Obviously, Chagas are doing good work as well, with the agri community. So there is support out there for our customers. We've also just completed a pilot with Business in the Community, whereby we brought in like 25 SMEs to run a carbon literacy program. So really just give them, you know, the basic knowledge of what is a carbon footprint and how do you measure it and where are the tools. And we're also running a series of SME workshops around the country independently, where we're just bringing our SME. So for us, it's only a start. We're running an education. There are tools available online, and we hope to really expand that the rest of this year and into next year.
Okay, super. Okay, so on to the man with the money. So David, talk to me about VC. So what is the Yield Lab?
So we are a agri-food sustainable VC fund. So we raised 55 million a couple of years ago, and we have a mandate from our investors, a dual mandate, in fact, from our investors to invest that into early stage startups. Our dual mandate is, one, to give them back an economic return, but secondly, to give them back a sustainability return. So every single investment we make in the agri-food sector must meet sustainability criteria. We're writing checks anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million as a first check. We go down as low as 100,000 as a first check, and normally you can invest around the TRL 6-7 level. You know, if the company is spinning out or has spun out from university, we're kind of at the earliest stage. We're really investing for commercial development, less so scientific development. So it's early stage agri-food tech investing.
So what companies are you working with that are kind of exciting in terms of in the last maybe couple of months that you're, you know, and I know you mentioned you're not just in Ireland, like it's European.
Yeah, so myself, I'm part of Yield Lab Europe. We have 26 investments all across Europe. We have team members in Amsterdam, Luxembourg, Paris, and so on. Like some of our most interesting investments, we have, and to come back to people are talking about Chinese and English for business versus science. To take two of our best companies, two of our best CEOs, one of them, she's a lady based in Glasgow. She is very much a scientist. She was a professor at Glasgow University for about 10 years in this field before she decided to spin it out and become a CEO. There's no one who knows more about the sector than she does. She has developed a peptide as an alternative to a chemical insecticide or pesticide, really, for Spotted wing Drosophila, aphids, and so on. Very exciting. She just raised. We gave her first check of 100,000 about 3 years ago. She just now raised another 25 million. So she's doing exceptionally well. It's a very exciting product, and that's someone who she's a scientist to her core and has surrounded herself with business people. But it's her company. To talk about another example, we've invested in a UCD spin-out, a company called Nanobox, who are using nanobubbles for a huge number of purposes in industrial cleaning, in agricultural efficiency, and so on. And that's a case whereby the postdoc who invented this, he has stayed with the business, which is very important for us, so much knowledge, but he has brought in a CEO. And in fact, that CEO was brought in through the Enterprise Ireland Business Partnership Program. And so he's brought in the Chinese speaker, as opposed to learning Chinese himself. And ironically, that Chinese speaker, who's an Irishman, but that businessman he was a doctorate himself, 30, 40 years ago in that state. So he brings a scientific background. But those are the things that we're invested in. You know, when we first invested in Nanobox, they had proved it works in the lab. They had some interesting letters from very big names, Hyundai, Samsung's, saying, "Oh, this is cool," but they didn't have much more than that. In other cases, we're investing in companies with €1 million revenue, so it's a broad. Right.
Now, you did say to me you don't invest in farmers and farms. So in that respect, you know, you'd said it's, you know, cutting edge, you know, scientific.
We love farmers and farms, but it's not what the VC model is. So the VC model is most companies we invest in will fail. And we're very happy about that. So we're going to make 25 investments. 10 of them are going to lose all our money, and that's fine. 10 of them might give us back our money, that's okay. But it's the 2 or 3 that give us back 10 or 20 times our money that the whole business model of VC is based on. And because of that, we need to invest in things that can give back that 10 or 20 times. The phrase is always used, we invest in the inventor of the mousetrap. We don't invest in the guy or girl who made a slightly better mousetrap. It's got to be revolutionary. It's got to be, Google have to buy you for $1 billion. And so farmers are great, but they can only, the farm can only be so big. The farm's not going to be sold in 10 years' time for 10 times the value today. So, like, I have turned down investments. Actually, we were talking about Food Cloud. I met Food Cloud 11 years ago. The meeting after that was with one of the other NDRC cohort. He said, "I'll double your money in a year," and I believed him, and he would have. But we didn't invest in him because that's not the model. 2 times money back is not enough. It's got to go for broke. And you come back with telling 2 stories about, the investors want to see the big story. We do. We need to see the vision. So if you're coming to an investor, you need to sell that vision about this can be ginormous, this can be huge. And we also won't believe you because you're here with 2 people, and there's no way you're going to get from here to there. Like, how's that going to be possible? So you got to have this trick or the skill of telling 2 stories, which is this can be huge. If all goes well, it can be huge. And that's how we believable. But you also have to sell a second story, which is actually in the next 3 years, I'm going to do something very tangible and very real, something that people can actually react to. You kind of make us excited about the vision, but no plan to get to the vision because that's impossible. But at least it exists. If it doesn't exist, don't worry. Don't bother. But it's the 3-year kind of much more tangible. I've got 1 customer this year. Next year, we're going to have 5 customers. Next year, we're going to have 10 customers. That's something that is testable and
milestones. Okay, talk to me, because Frank had mentioned at the end he has found certain countries, maybe it's just insect protein, but that are maybe a bit more adaptable, or they're a bit of ahead of the curve in terms of sustainability or the bioeconomy. How do you think Ireland were positioned in terms of regulation, but also in terms of our businesses? I don't know, Colette, you want to start with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I suppose every country in Europe, I think, has different challenges, and we're all different sizes and we all have different reliances. Like, so just for example, obviously Ireland has a big reliance on agri, and that is a big emitter of GHG. But, Germany has a big reliance on industry, okay, and they're very, very reliant on, brown fuel. So, like, we're looking at it probably through a different lens. I think, like, we have a lot of regulatory support in this country. Like, again, from Teagasc and Borbia for agri, for the likes of SEAI and Enterprise Ireland. And I do think corporate Ireland is spending time now thinking about how they're supporting their supply chain. So I think, I suppose progress is incremental. Like, I don't see that if you look at the GHG emission profile, we probably are behind where some of our peers are. And some of that could be down to big projects such as like renewables, right? Such as electrification of rail and things like that. So that's probably where we probably need to invest and move the dial slightly. But I think, we're making good progress in terms of what we can do. I think there are some big wins that we could do. And as we were saying earlier, like, there's maybe where we focus our attention could be changed as well. Like, and obviously we have a big opportunity for offshore renewables over the next 10 years. And we can be a real leader in Europe if we kind of get that right, and really invest in that quickly and get ahead of the game in terms of planning. So there is stuff that is kind of not all quite in place yet in terms of the centre. But I think there's a lot of investments, a lot of people waiting for Ireland. There's a lot of good things that we are doing in terms of like the rest of Europe. So like, I think it's hard to kind of compare apples with oranges, I suppose.
Yeah, as you say, different economic backgrounds and structures in place. What do you think?
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. From the ag side specifically, I do think it's something we can be very proud of. I do think as a country, we're definitely at the forefront of sustainability from the farmers and all that. There's a lot of groundswell sustainability work that goes on. Colette mentioned the work that Kerry and Bank Bar and so on are doing sustainability. It's become very much important. We know Nestle very, very well. And whenever we talk to Nestle and say, what's your biggest problem? They say sustainability in dairy. All they care about is sustainability in dairy. They're not talking about replacing dairy. They're not talking about dairy alternatives. It's about, we have a supply chain. We need a lot of milk and the dairy products. We need to make that more sustainable. And that's all they care about. And they would much rather, and they say this, they would much rather have Irish milk than other countries should not be named milk. Because our our processes, our nature, the fact that we have pasture-based farming is much more sustainable than a lot of the alternatives. So we do have things to be proud of there. A huge amount more work to be done though.
Yeah. And what about both of you, key trends that you see emerging, from both your perspectives that are happening in the next 12 months? What are you looking at?
In 12 months, it's always hard to say give me 2 years, give me 3 years. So interesting things that we see a lot around sustainability only getting more important on the agenda.
Yeah.
But sustainability is great in ag and food because it's synonymous with efficiency. So by making the supply chain more efficient, which is good for business, which is good for sustainability, that's very popular. We see robotics in the medium to long term. Robotics replacing labor, and not because labor needs to be replaced, but because labor is a huge labor shortage. If we talk to farmers in the UK here, labor is a big problem. So it's the case that we need to have an alternative because labor is no longer there. So robotics, medium to long term. AI is very interesting. It is a buzzword that I hate because a lot of people are slapping it on the companies just to make it look cool.
It's AI integrated, but it's not
AI,
really,
cloud, mobile, blockchain, hit all the buzzwords and make it cool. But there's a very interesting demo I saw recently with the head of AI at Microsoft. He had a working example of an Indian farmer who his crop was sick, no idea, took a picture of it. And the AI said, "Oh, I recognize that disease. It has been in India before, but it's similar latitude to you on the other side of the world. This is exactly what the disease is. This is what they use to treat it. All powered by AI." And so agronomy as a industry is where we see the huge revolution in AI. Like we're seeing a lot of startups in that space. We have a lot of companies in our portfolio that do precision ag and agronomy advice, and they're just layering AI on top for huge benefits in terms of insights and scale.
And Colette?
We probably look at it slightly different today, right? Because we're not at the cold face of innovation and we've got much more stable business spaces. But I suppose I do think we see sustainability coming much more important on the agenda. And we think that's going to be driven by legislation and the stick really that's coming their way. But I suppose what I would like to see more of is businesses looking at sustainability as the carrot rather than the stick. Like there are real opportunities to use some things that you already have within your business. So for example, the reuse of waste, how can you make that into a commercial income? So for example, we've seen certain customers whereby they have put in like for a CHP plant on site where they've used their own waste to create their own energy, and now they're self-sufficient from an energy perspective, but they also sell that back into the grid. And we've seen some businesses where they've taken the step to invest in sustainability credentials or ESG credentials over the last 2 or 3 years, and now that when they're going for mandates or tenders, they're actually winning the tender not on price but on the fact that they have better ESG credentials, because the larger businesses and i.e. their customers want that data. So there is an opportunity there for businesses to think ahead and actually go, what do I have in my business, whether it be land or space or renewables on my roof or recycling my product or reusing my waste. Like there is kind of it's thinking about it commercially, but also slightly innovatively, and think, actually this could be a real advantage for my business in terms of where I want to go for the future.
So as Bank of Ireland head of sustainability, what do you want? Do you want people to come to you, ask questions, engage?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, we have sustainable finance targets, right? So we want to reach 25 or 15 billion by 2025. But it's like we're never going to get there unless we start talking to businesses about how they're spending their investments, right? So it's more about, especially smaller businesses, come and speak to the Bank of Ireland and use the tools that are out there for you to start thinking about your carbon footprint. I think the most important thing, hopefully the message I can get across, is if you know what your carbon footprint is and you measure it, then you can have an action plan, and then you can track the actions and your demonstrable reduction in emissions. A lot of businesses are doing really good work, but they're not tracking it. So when the big corporates and the customers are coming to look for the data, it's not there, even though they've done a lot of the good work. So track and report what you're doing, because it will move you up the ladder in terms of your supply chain. And as part of that, obviously, we're happy to have conversations about how we can support from, just a holistic perspective, but also then from a lending perspective. Because when you measure your footprint, as I say, you have a better, clearer vision of what you need to invest in. And we have the product to support that.
Fantastic. David, how about you? Who do you want to have come talk to you?
So we're still looking for investment. We're still looking for investments to make. As I said, we invest in the kind of tier L 6 or 7 people looking for that seed Series A round. Everything we invest in is agri-food tech. We don't invest in B2C, so we don't invest in new types of jam on the supermarket shelf. We do invest in the new type of jam jar. It's kind of how I always phrase it. It's the technology and the enabler. It's the B2B sales. So we're still actively investing, and we've looked so far this year at 865 opportunities. We've made 4 investments. So just give you a sense of kind of where the bar is. But that's not to say that of the 861 we said no to, we won't invest in them next year, or we won't invest in them later on. So if anyone is raising money or thinking about raising money, I always say it's much better to say hello to a VC before you raise money. If the day you meet the VC for the first time is the day you ask for money, you're probably going to get a no. You know, people don't invest in a single data point. You got to build up a relationship. There's nothing more powerful than meeting a VC and saying, I'm going to do these 10 things in the next 6 months. Go along in 6 months' time and say, remember those 10 things? I got 6 of them done. 2 of them turned out to be stupid ideas, so I didn't bother doing them. And 2 of them didn't get around. And you've shown progress, you've shown. So if anyone's interested in raising money, very happy to.
So come start early as well.
Yeah.
Okay, great messages. Okay, I'd like to open it up to the floor for questions and answers.
Sorry. So I probably have 2 questions. The first one would be, in order to make not just an incremental step, but to actually a meaningful step to help us really reach the targets that are written out in government policy and scientifically reach the targets that, you know, save the planet rather than letting it continue as it is. The infrastructures are, as Kevin mentioned, are considerable. And science can solve the problems. I fully believe that. We have solutions. But that other part of that question is then when you're talking to the companies, as I have done, they will say things to you. They're very hesitant to lose a half a cent or a 0.000 of a cent. They would say to me, well, if I replace that plastic with this one, that tub might be X point percentage, way more. And if you come back and think about it, well, actually the product in the tub is actually the thing that weighs the most. So your advice to how to progress, to go forward in these constraints.
I'm happy to take the business one if you want me to. Yeah. So basically, in terms of like the businesses, like there is a cost to being more sustainable, and we get asked that question all the time as well. Who's going to pay for this, and who? We don't have time, or we don't have the resource, especially for smaller businesses. But it kind of comes back to that point. Like if you want to stay and be commercially viable within your supply chain, you really need to start thinking about making these changes today. And the best people to talk to are actually your key customers, because what they're driving in their business is going to be what they're going to want from their supply chain. So actually that's probably the best piece of advice I would say is actually go out to your customers and see what direction they're traveling in, ask them what they want, and then have a think about how you can invest it. There are supports out there and there are, you know, lower price lending, but I think you have to change your mindset to, it's not just about financial return, it's about sustainability metrics as well, because that is the direction of travel from a reporting perspective, but also I think from just a commercial perspective in terms of moving. So from in terms of stable businesses, I think the changes are incremental. I think where we can move the dial bigger is when we collaborate with bigger businesses and we try to help that supply chain and incentivize them. In terms of moving the dial quicker, I think that is probably where innovation comes in, right?
Yeah, and so one of the things I think we've all learned in the last 5 years, and we certainly learned it, is consumers are not willing to pay a premium for sustainability. We all hoped that would be the case, but that's not going to happen. And so we actually held last Tuesday in Amsterdam, we did the final of our Global Dairy Sustainability Challenge. So we ran a huge global competition, Solutions for Global Dairy, and we had a panel that ranged from the researchers back at a university, through the co-ops, through producers, all the way up to the Nestle. So a panel of, you know, how are we going to make dairy more sustainable? And the only question that stumped everyone was, who's going to pay for it? Because no one wants to, and no one can. And what is the hard reality is the consumer's not going to do it. But the view we have is certainly that, to Colette's point, it is going to become the requirement. So, you know, in order to stay in business, people are just going to have to be more sustainable because it's coming down in regulation. And yes, it's going to make things more costly, and yes, it's going to make things more the margins tighter. but it is still a requirement. One of the things we look for is that any companies we invest in, it should be at least cost neutral. Like when we were making investments 5 years ago, we were like, oh yeah, maybe someone pay a small premium for it. That's not the case. It has to be at least cost neutral. And there's no alternative at the moment to that. So it has to be a like-for-like investment.
I think actually that you answered part of my question there. My name is Jennifer Lyons. I'm here on behalf of Professor Anna Davies from Trinity College, Dublin, and we actually do sustainability impact reporting, and we find a challenge in that kind of the absence of a hard enough stick and absence also of the big enough carrot to chase. So maybe you could speak a little bit, either of you, about more about the legislative piece that's coming down.
Yeah, like I think I think the stick is pretty big in terms of where its direction. Like if you ask any corporate in Ireland who's going to report in the next 2 years, I think they would agree there's a commensurate amount of work that's going into this. And also, like it's very unknown. So nobody, like if you think about large PLCs and large corporates who've been used to reporting to stock exchanges, and they know exactly how to position that in terms of speaking in front of the market. They also know how the reports should look and their peers and what they're saying. Nobody has any real idea what they're going to report, what reporting is going to look like, what data each business. So if you even think about 4 or 5 Irish or European PLCs in the same sector, they don't know what sustainability metrics are going to be included there. So, like, to be fair, I think there's a real challenge over the next couple of years for the bigger businesses, and they're not going to get it right first time. And we all have to be a bit patient to start to see that flow through. But I think what will be helpful for smaller businesses going forward is actually when the larger businesses do start to report, that's when you can start to align your KPIs to actually, here's my key customers in agri or food and waste, and actually this is what they're doing. So therefore they're going to want this from me, and we should start to do that as well. And I think it's going to be more of a trickle down effect, to be honest with you, than a big, I suppose the way they look at it, what somebody said to me the other day, like we definitely in Europe have a stick approach, whereas in the US they have a carrot approach, right? Where it's actually much more incentive based. Investment in sustainability is rewarded, whereas in the EU it's more like expected. But I do think like it's a serious kind of resource for a lot of businesses over the next couple of years. And it's going to be a real lot of work as well for the smaller businesses, which is why we try to advise to get out ahead of it a little bit.
Yeah, maybe.
Just picking up on that point, for I suppose the suppliers or the customers, it's a bit mysterious in relation to CSRD, it is very tricky to figure out where you fit in as an SME to their all their reporting. There's a lot of talk, but it's very hard to say for us align our reporting with what's coming down. Is there like practical, if you were to point us to practical resources that would kind of make it quick? Because I suppose, like Kevin said, you could pay consultants a lot of money to try and figure this out. Like we'd prefer not to, but it is quite tricky to figure out exactly what you're pitching to your customer about how you're going to help them reach their CSRD.
So in some respects, like there's a chicken and egg element here. It's going back to the point that people haven't actually reported on sustainability yet. So I think as you see reporting cycle next year, you will start to see that data come through. IBEC and Bank of Ireland, or Davy Horizons, which is part of Bank of Ireland, are actually launching a CSRD toolkit next Tuesday. So that will be available to all SMEs to go in and start thinking about what SME looks like. There are 12, I believe, what they call ESRIs, which is basically 12 metrics under which each business has to report under. I think the first year it's only 9 to give people a bit of it. Within each metric, some businesses are collecting up to 1,000 data points. So like we're not there yet in terms of being able to message down what we actually need. I think, start with the pieces that like your energy usage, what you're using water for, how do you use your waste? Think about your carbon footprint. Do you have, proper controls or incentives with staff? How do you invest in your community? From a G perspective, what are your policies and what are your frameworks? I think from a small business perspective, start with your own business, what you already know. And in a lot of instances, what you're already doing, but basically tell everybody what you're doing. like you already have the frameworks in place. You already do a lot in terms of reducing your footprint. You already are an ESG business by fundamentally reusing your waste, right? So make sure that's on your website. Make sure that you're being able to talk to customers around what you already do. And I don't think, for example, like anyone's going to come to you tomorrow and want these lists of data points, but it's more to get you start thinking about actually, what can I do? How can I report? And eventually it will become much more clear, much more transparent what those larger businesses and customers are going to want or demand, I suppose.
And it can be a really positive messaging for the
Absolutely,
business. Yeah.
Hi, Colette. I wanted to ask, seeing as you're quite embedded in the industry and the sustainability space with corporations, do you feel that there's a shifting attitude towards sustainability in terms of seeing it as less of an obligation in terms of ESG compliance and reporting, and more as potentially a driver of business value and opportunity for innovation?
I don't think it's that definitely shifted into that place. I think that's where we would like it to be. I think some businesses are more innovative than others and have seen this as a key USP over the last few years, both large and small in fairness. But I still think at the moment it's more of a have to do rather than want to do, or because it's a commercial imperative. I think that's the direction that we'd like to go in terms of, you know, making businesses really consider what's the best driver of their business from a commerciality perspective. Sustainability has to be embedded in that conversation always, I think. So at all levels of your business, you should be thinking about sustainability, whether it be you're looking at profitability, whether you're looking at procurement, or you're looking at staff, retention and talent, like all those things are going to have a sustainability angle going forward.
Thank you.
Probably comes back to the value and the vision and the vision statement of the business, you know, as part of it.
Definitely. And I think probably as we go through the CSRD process over the next couple of years, you may well see that come through in the likes of the stock exchange, right? And the share price and how that gets priced into, you know, equity, but also in terms of investment, right? We already see it in our PE houses, and the VCs are already saying it's an invaluable part of their criteria when they're investing. So that is the direction of travel in terms of, like, if you want investment, there has to be a sustainability outcome as well, right?
Yeah. So thanks for all the information you're providing here. I just from a Bank of Ireland point of view, and looking again at sustainability and sort of the circular economy, if you like. And being very, very much from a practical standpoint and where food is coming from. So do you guys, are you saying that a farmer can go into a Bank of Ireland and say, can you help me with this, or is lending going to be eased in terms of them creating some businesses on the farm or alternatives? And then I know from you, the investor, and I apologize, forget your name, but from the investor point of view, your model is very much Silicon Valley-like model. And do you ever take a very much more of a holistic stand at, okay, there's this new technology that's going to test targets, soil health, whatever. Do you actually go at the ground level and look at the actual supplier and say, okay, this is going to help XYZ farmers? Because I feel a lot of the investments go towards agri-businesses, which if you look at the States, look at the rest of the developed world, agri-business is taking over from the very much sustainable family farm.
In terms of, I suppose, the bank and lending to farmers, like, I don't think our attitude has changed to how we lend to farmers. We're the biggest lender to farmers in Ireland. We lend over 65%. Where we're trying to support them is to incentivize them, I suppose, to think about being more sustainable and creating more sustainable produce. I think, to be fair, as you said earlier, Ireland has been up in lights for producing high quality food for a long time now. So I think farmers have already been thinking about this. I think the co-ops are working really well in terms of helping their farmers, and we're trying to basically support them as well. So there are tools in branch, there are tools online, and our lending is also there to support that. But I guess we're not excluding farmers who don't necessarily go down that road. We'd like all of our farmers to do this kind of on a voluntary basis.
In terms of kind of the customer segments, so, you know, I mentioned two of our companies, two other companies that's worth mentioning to what you're talking to. One company is a company called Carbon Space. They do carbon and methane emission sequestration monitoring, and their customers are farmers. So that enables them globally in order to prove to their suppliers that I got this amount of land and I've sequestered this amount of carbon for you and so on. Another interesting company we have is a company called Aravant. Aravant's about 350,000 farmers on it, average holding a couple of hectares, and they do that's precision ag. So that is reducing fertilizer usage, improving seeding, and so on. So we approach it from a very simple standpoint. A third of all greenhouse gas emissions come from putting food on the table. Any companies that can help improve that, any part of the supply chain, is an interesting investment for food.
Thank you, super chat. Question directed to Colette, if I may. We're talking about farmers here, and a lot of farmers have invested in sheds, existing infrastructure, and whatever, and they have funded that investment with bank loans, and they have to transition. And effectively, you have stranded assets on your loan books. And I'm just wondering, is there any conversation going on within the sustainability conversation of sort of debt write-offs for people who have invested, need to transition, but are caught with these loan repayments they have to pay to financial institutions? That's my question.
I suppose they still have viable businesses, right, in terms of what they're doing today. I don't know where the derogation's got to go over the next couple of years, but in terms of what they have today, they would have borrowed against whatever our credit policy was, and we would have assumed that they can have their payment capacity to repay that loan. But in terms of how we look at every sector, it's from a just transition position. We support 50% of the economy, and we're not looking to exclude any sector or any individual or any business from our lending book at the moment. There is going to have to be a conversation over time as we all start to invest more sustainably around credit risk and credit policy and appetite for credit. But that's not going to leave any of our business customers stranded. There will be stranded assets for sure. But I guess we've been a lender into this economy for 250 years. We're not looking to abandon any of our customers. We're basically looking to help them make those changes now, so they have things like alternative income that they can look to. There's lots of options for farmers around how they may transition their business, and we're trying to have that conversation both internally and externally to have the supports in place and the products in place to be able to do that.
Any other questions?
Yeah, from the bank's perspective, is where you put the lending showing up on the ESG, on your ESG report. So if you have two companies, one is ESG positive, one is ESG negative, both of them are viable in that space. And you're lending them equal amounts of money, does that show up? Does the positive one show up on your balance sheet, or does the negative, where you lend the money?
So we lend to both at the moment.
No, I understand that, but the question is it showing up on your ESG balance sheet?
No, not at the moment. That's not how. So our whole balance sheet, right, is our scope 3. And I guess, again, going back to that point, we want to transition all of the balance sheet to be more ESG positive.
Thanks. Just one last point, just on collaboration. So, you talked a lot about the agri sector. Are there sectors that could cross, collaborate with others in terms of synergizing and information and knowledge sharing? Is that something that might not be happening now, but could be in the future? So if there's certain sectors that are leading, maybe agriculture, and then other sectors could follow, has that come up at all in terms of your experience with your clients or customers?
I suppose people tend to operate within their own sector and their own industry. But what I would say about sustainability, and I worked in banking for a long time, and I used to work in the UK, and I went into rooms with a lot of other banks, and they would be very guarded in what they would tell you and how they would speak. When it comes to sustainability, people are a lot more open and a lot more willing to talk about both their successes and their pitfalls to help those that come behind them.
Yeah. What about yourself, David? Any chance for collaboration and synergizing across sector?
Yeah, because we all know the solution is not going to come from a single sector. The solution is not, partnerships are key, and it's also, to come back to the question earlier about who's going to pay for this. That the only way this is viable if it's the burden, as it were, and the profits are shared across the supply chain. It can't be one person.
Can't be penalised by the consumer or the end user. Yeah. Okay, listen, thank you so much for such a great insights. I'd like to thank David and Colette for coming in and talking to us, and I'm sure they'll be happy to chat. Thanks.
To thank everybody and to just give some final reflections before we let you go for your sandwiches. So I think first of all, I'd just like to thank you all very much for coming here in person today. I know it's a busy week. I've seen some of you at our biocircularity event last week in Ashtown and Chagask, some of you at the kickoff events in DEC on Monday, and there's a lot going on in Bioeconomy Ireland Week. So thanks very much to all of you for attending in person. We've had some great contributions from our speakers and our panelists and from you, the audience. So just to say thank you very much for that. But I suppose there was a few things that just to note that I was kind of trying to reflect on during the morning. And I suppose one of the questions is, what's particular to the bioeconomy? Why is the bioeconomy different in any way to the other sectors? And I suppose, you know, we started off with Kevin and he talked about the journey, the barriers, the maze and the mountains that he faced. But I'd say that's not unique to the bioeconomy. I think that's probably something that everybody faces. And I suppose one of the things that did struck me though was, you know, and again, this is probably another common thing, is the importance of collaboration and partnerships. And I suppose, again, that's common across all sectors. But I suppose the thing that came back to me was really the need to explain. And I noted a quote from Colette. She talked about businesses can't spend on sustainability unless they understand it. And it's the same for the consumer, it's the same for the technologies, it's the same when we're talking about insect protein and things like that. So that's probably something that's a little bit unique about the bioeconomy, the need to explain. And I think that speaks to the role of organizations like Chagask, the universities and other sectors and organizations to help in explaining that role. And indeed, you know, the NGOs have a significant role, like Food Cloud in that as well. So obviously an event like this requires the inputs of many people. So I particularly like to thank our keynote speaker, Professor Kevin O'Connor, our companies OMU, represented by Frank Clark, and our Food Cloud, represented by Avian O'Brien, our funders, the Yield Lab, and our Bank of Ireland, represented by David Bowles, and Bank of Ireland, represented by Colette Shirley, and obviously Rosalind Beer for moderating a very warm and informative fireside chats. I'd also like the Further team for providing us with Rosalind, the Guinness Enterprise Centre led by Centre Director Niamh Collins and her team Claire, Paddy and Maura, who helped us deal with a lot of problem-solving issues yesterday and today. And of course, the buyer and catering team led by Ting Ting Yangzi, Sean Douglas from BioOrbic, who also helped us with advice and support, and obviously my colleague and ShapingBio colleague, Dr. Noha Mahmood, who had a central role in organising this event. Finally, I'd just like to ask you if you wouldn't mind scanning the QR code here, just to give us a little bit of feedback on the event. It'll only just take a few minutes and that'll be really helpful information for us. And also, just as I mentioned at the outset, this event is organised under the aegis of the ShapingBio project. So I would encourage you to link and connect with that, and we have some information there. So I would say, please don't rush away. There are sandwiches and tea and coffee in the coffee dock. So, you know, I think there's a lot of knowledge and enthusiasm and passion in this room. So please share that with each other and don't be rushing away. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time today.